Welcome to the Creative Condition podcast with me, Ben Talon, illustrator and creativity coach, founder of the Creative Condition, artist and writer. I bring 20 years of creative industry experience and a lifelong love of creativity, a fundamental pillar of human happiness, to you through ongoing personal exploration and the shared experiences of others. You'll get a nourishing mix of creative industry professionals and people far and wide using creativity in ways that can take our learning to the next level so we can maximise our unique blend. The show's been supported from day one by Illustration X, a tremendous illustration agency representing a shining global roster of illustrators and animators over at illustrationx.com. The music for the show is by Dirty Freud, who you can listen to now on all good streaming services. And for everything else, for my coaching, resources and inspiration, head to thecreativecondition.com.
That right now is the rebellion. That's the revolution. It's finding ways to experience real joy and do exactly what you want to do and be seriously nice to people. Not like fake nice to people, but like really, really genuinely open to people. And it's crazy that right now those things are counterculture.
Today I'm joined by Tala Schlossberg, a New York-based artist. Multidisciplinary, we'll go with that. She makes video, she uses hand lettering, she draws, she talks, she writes, she walks. She's a living, breathing artist, and we get into what that looks like from her point of view. We're talking about joy, making art, and how they can be radical acts of counterculture in a world as turbulent as the one we find ourselves in today. This is the Creative Condition. How are you doing, guys? Welcome back to the show. I am Ben Talon, your host of the Creative Condition, founder of the Creative Condition. How are you doing? I hope you're well. I'm not going to talk about the weather today because it's boring and I do it all the time and it's so habitual. I hope you're well. I hope you're good. I'm feeling pretty good at the moment. I'm in some good rhythms. I'm in some good momentum. We are talking about that today, Tala Schlossberg and I. Tala's a wonderful artist based in New York, and I remember when Hector sent me the proposed lineup for Paradiso, the inaugural festival in Mexico, in Mérida, Yucatan. I went through every single person on the roster and I pulled out Ivan Cash, Tala Schlossberg, today's guest, and Owen Harvey. And I pulled those out because each of them was working with such a strong personal brand of human connection that resonated with what I do, with what I love about the human condition and what I love about humans who make art. And we were going to have a panel discussion, and unfortunately Ivan got a tummy upset before, so he had to bail, and I ended up talking to just Tala and Owen, and it was magic. We missed Ivan, but what happened was a lovely three-way conversation about human connection, about what that looks like in today's world with this rise of automation. And I fell in love with the human being, Tala Schlossberg, the artist, Tala Schlossberg. To me, she's a pure artist. She doesn't limit herself to a discipline. She's known primarily for her video work and motion graphics, which are tremendous. But the way she brings her personality to that, her own personal brand, the way she writes on her Substack, all of it seemed quite magnetic to me. And after our conversation at Paradiso, I just had to know more. So I got in touch and she was up for a chat and she's here today. So I am very excited about that. Before I go any further, big thank you to the founding sponsor of the show who make this all possible, have done for the decade of this podcast's existence. Illustration X, they're a brilliant illustration and animation agency representing hundreds of global powerhouse illustrators and animators, and you can see the whole roster, the work they're doing with clients and the awesome work they're doing for the creative industry at illustrationx.com. I would also love you to consider supporting the Ukrainian Institute, a wonderful organisation who are supporting the Ukrainian creative community, trying to connect them globally at a time when they are locked in a horrific war. ui.org.ua is where you can see the work, where you can share it, give them some exposure. You might even want to commission them, but check it out, ui.org.ua. So what's been going on? There's been a burst of my Brain Dump Brew episodes. So if you've seen them recently, I've been doing some short form morning coffee rambles. They're not just rambles, it's all relevant to creativity. I am kind of giving you my thoughts of the day, the things I've been thinking about, and it's all relevant to this ongoing exploration of creativity, which is the foundation that the Creative Condition is built on. I love your feedback. Do you like those episodes? I spoke to an upcoming guest recently who's been jumping into a few, and she loved the short form, accessible format. And that's why I wanted to do it, because I'm trying to dial back my social media use in terms of what I represent my business on, because otherwise it distracts the mind and it has you locked in this state of feeling that there's always something waiting for you there. I would like some single focus, and that's what I'm trying to do. So, in pursuit of that, I am talking more often to you guys through these short form episodes. So do you like it? Let me know. If you don't, if it's too much all the time, if it's incessant, let me know. Or can it? I like to listen to my listeners, and if it's good or it's bad or it's somewhere in between, it's important for me to know it. So give us a shout. You can check it all out along with my coaching. I've been doing some wonderful sessions recently. I did one with Ollie Keane, who's the founder of Roxbox Studios in Los Angeles. Great session. We went for 4.5 hours on a pit stop. We went through all of his creativity's makeup. We talked about branding. We talked about who he is as a human, where he's come from. Such a rich story. We also met at Paradiso. I would love to work with you guys. I'm looking to work with more artists, designers. I'll work with bus drivers if they value creativity. I do it with agencies. I do it with individuals. Go and check it all out over at thecreativecondition.com/coach. Other than that, what's going on with you guys? Let me know. Ben at bentalon.com. Hit me up on LinkedIn if you want to drop me a DM. I'm up for it. I will talk. I love chatting to all of you. But without further ado, let's get into it. Let's bring you my conversation with New York-based multidisciplinary artist Tala Schlossberg.
I feel like I've been creatively adapting.
Yeah.
I would say like successfully staying afloat. I sort of expected to be able to stay in my own kind of creative wavelength more easily. And I think that I've been like humbled by how absolutely pervasive the collective despair is right now.
I think the sensitivity, double-edged sword, plays a big part in that, where obviously, not maybe not obviously, but I'm a big believer in the value of that heightened sensitivity that artists, kind of get their material from. But the downside of that is the ongoing battle to learn how to manage it.
Yeah. I mean, I think that it's like, I've been really thinking about this. I think that it's what almost feels like, I think that we're all sort of like threatened in unique ways right now by what's going on. And I think because of that sensitivity, like, I think the sort of threat in the artist sector is like inspiration and joy and possibility. And I feel like I'm sort of realizing that like those resources are at stake in a way that I don't think I fully knew that they could be. If that makes sense.
Yeah. No, it does make sense. That's interesting, because I have these confusing moments. I don't know about you, but I have these, where I almost berate's maybe too strong, but question myself, like, why are you not, you should be a kind of a leader in this area, as someone who's more experienced in my career than perhaps people coming into the industry. You should be showing that, finding that fight is important. And on a good day, I do feel that. And I do feel very inspired and kind of, okay, this is my challenge. This is what I want to interpret in my work, in my writing, and in just the way I live my life. But on a day when I'm not feeling too good, or I'm fatigued, or whatever the vulnerability is that waylays me, then it's more challenging. And that's when I kind of, spend longer on the dog walk, moping around the local fields, looking for some small talk,
Yeah. What do you feel like your ratio is right now of the good days to the not ones?
Last couple of weeks, good. Like, I'm on a good run at the minute. I think I'm slightly less vulnerable than I once was, just because in early parenthood, I was so tired that I really started to feel the weight of the world more than I'd done ever previously. Nothing crazy alarming, but just a near enough constant low level anxiety, which would peak according to headlines, and I was way too at the mercy of the external. Whereas I think because I knew I had to get myself out of that hole, I did a lot of research into the way our brains work and thought processes, and taking charge of that stuff a bit more. And I've gotten slightly better at that. So my defenses are a little stronger. A long way to go, but I think I always will. Being, I don't want to challenge the sensitivity too much because it's also really good. But at the moment, okay. I'm the nice thing, and I'm sure you can echo this and I want to talk about this, but having the different outlets and the different mediums artistically gives me somewhat of an ability to pivot. Is that something you are able to do?
Yeah, completely. Yeah, I mean, I feel like almost, yeah, it's like I have all these different outlets I like to do, obviously, but then this sort of same source material feels like it's kind of like the fuel, and it's like the lava almost, and I choose sort of like which volcano I want to come out of. Yeah, so there's like a kind of resilience in that, it's like, okay, if like this volcano and this volcano are not accessible to me right now, I feel generally like safe and calm knowing that there are a really wide variety of ways in this world that I can find expression. Yeah.
Yeah. So here's a question: con- do you consciously choose to use your art in such a way, or do you think it's a kind of no choice thing? I say that because I studied graphic activism for my dissertation. Once I got over the outrage of having to write a dissertation, I chose to study graphic activism just because it's something that appeared on my radar through Banksy and then a succession of other artists that I learned about off the back of that nature of work. And I felt great pull towards that. I always wanted to use my voice in some way. And that ebbs and flows. There are days when I just want to make silly stuff and fun stuff, and other times when I want to make a protest poster and things like that. Is it something that you, as a person, have yourself? Do you choose to use your work that way?
Um, that's a really good question. It's something I've been thinking a lot about lately because I don't feel like I feel that if I try to make decisions or if I try to lead myself from kind of that point of rationality, um, that's when I end up almost feeling kind of like stuck or anxious, or if I'm like if I try to sort of be like, okay, I really, because I feel like I'm in a little bit of this right now because I feel the same way of like I feel like I have things that I want to share and help kind of uplift people who haven't been like doing this kind of work in the same way for yeah, I want to like help my community and the people that kind of look to me as a source of inspiration and leadership. Um and I feel like for the past little bit I've been kind of like, okay, I want to write something or I want to put something out. And then it's funny because when I get into that mindset, then it creates this sort of cavern of pressure around this ambiguous thing, which is not the conditions that my best stuff comes from.
Mm.
So it almost feels like in retrospect, it connects in that way, but it's like that's not the place that I can really make the decisions from. It's sort of I have to almost tune it like back down so closely to the moment. Be like, okay, what do I want to be doing right now? Like naturally, like where's my energy pointing me? How fast do I want to be going? And then almost like create the conditions for things to come out of me well, and then the right message comes out. So it's sort of almost like that's how I'm trying to think about my work right now is like I need to create my right chamber for ideas. And then I think the message is going to inherently come out of that. I feel like I'm curious if you feel this way, but I feel very porous in that kind of way where if I can get myself into a state where I'm just seriously creating and just an absolute flow without that level of critical rationality, then all kinds of things just like emerge. It's like everything I've absorbed in the past little while just kind of comes out. So yeah, I think I used to think about it more strategically in that way. Like, what do I want to say? How do I want to help? How do I want to position myself?
Hmm.
And yeah, I've really just surrendered to the other thing as of lately.
That's music to my ears because that was the big turning point for me. I used to carry far too much of a weight around my neck unnecessarily
Yeah.
about this idea of making a difference, fighting for change. All brilliant, but the joy for me has come more recently in exactly what you just explained brilliantly, like the a more diffused version of that, a more personal gravitation towards just what feels good and on any given day. Because I do believe that an artist-led life is to be perceptive to something out there. Like I'm not religious. I don't have the terminology for it, but I certainly feel when there's that flow and there's serendipity and people come into my life that help my creativity and nourish my ideas, that
Yeah.
that can take on any form. And when that happens, it's truly magic. And there's something that I'm attuned to that I have no idea what it is. Call it universe, call it whatever you want. There's something that doors open and ideas come more readily. And I do think that it's part of our job living an artist-led life to be ready for those and to use them. And I was saying to a coaching client recently, which is quite a new thing for me, but I'm really loving the importance of not beating yourself up too much about the whole idea of making a difference. Just smiling at a stranger in the street instead of looking at your phone could change your life, and that could kickstart something that we can never imagine where that might lead. That's a beautiful thought, and I think that alleviates a little of that weight somewhat when I think of
Yeah.
that and think actually just the way I carry myself and the way I go about my life, and there's almost a quiet rebellion in optimism and in being nice to people and going against these antagonists of our current era. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, of course. It's like, yeah, I mean, that right now is the rebellion. Like, that's the revolution. It's finding ways to experience real joy and do exactly what you want to do and be seriously nice to people. Not like fake nice to people, but like really, really genuinely open to people. And it's crazy that right now those things are counterculture.
Yeah, it is, and but then even just saying that makes me feel a little bit excited, and that's what I was trying to get at earlier. It's like that's a fight I can get on board with. That's a fight
Exactly.
that makes me sing as a human, and I think that feeling is the compass. If I then
Yeah.
start thinking, well, I've got to create all this amazing, profound work, that's fuck that, because that's what makes me feel heavy and
Yeah.
overwhelmed, and that's everything about our current era is overwhelm. So you've got to move away
Exactly.
from that. And I think it's quite freeing to do that.
Yeah. And it's like creating out of that pressure place, it actually feeds the old stuff in a way where it's exactly like what you said, that compass thing. I think that is kind of what feels difficult societally right now is that we're kind of so many people have lost a handle on that compass in themselves. And I mean, everyone does. Like, I think that's just what it means to live a life is like you find it and then you lose it. And then you have to find a completely different new way to find that thing again. And it's like that's the thing that I keep coming back to over and over and over again is that the feeling of that alignment and finding that compass, like it's always in a place of joy and it's in a place of peace and it's in a place of calmness and letting things unfold. It never comes from the hustle, grind, climb, pressure. Like it's not in that space. And I find myself, I've been so conditioned to like want to attack. I think there's like a real safety in a perceived safety in the sort of attachment of the grind and the moreness and the output
Hmm.
and the that kind of rational achievement minded orientation and it's actually so it's like it's empty at the end of the day.
It is. It really is. And I think of even just now. So, I sat down and I had about 45 minutes before our chat, and I'd done most of the things that I had to do. And I know I caught myself falling into that productivity trap of going, oh, what things could I check off from tomorrow's list? Like while I've got this little window, it's like, hang on a minute, you're getting the chance to interview a very cool artist in a moment. Like,
Mm.
just immerse in the website and enjoy the work, and like prepare in a really sensory way for the interview, which is what I did, and I felt quite proud about, overriding that tendency to do what you just described. And I was sat there watching your later plane animations and various and the rose ones on the website, and it's again, it's reminding yourself that as artists, it's about the layers and the sensory value of these things. That is just as valid as anything tangible in a to-do list.
Yeah, I'm so curious. Do you think it's an artist thing or do you think it's an all people thing? Like even your phrasing an artist-led life. Like, do you think that that is sort of the way that artists must lead, or do you think it's like, I don't know, because I feel like I've really been toying this with this idea. Like, is this how we're all meant to be living, is is this yeah, or is this sort of unique to the artist sphere of
I
things?
don't think it's unique. I think that it falls back into the sensitivity thing. And I remember when I got to interview Jen Granneman, who wrote a brilliant book a couple of years ago called Sensitive: The Power of a Thoughtful Mind in an Overwhelming World. It's a brilliant book. And she estimated that societally, well, just in all of humanity, roughly 30% are highly sensitive, 40% sit somewhere in between, 30% are more pragmatic and less sensitive. And none of it, all are great. Society wouldn't work were it not for that balance. And immediately I think of friends who are way more pragmatic, who will iron me out when I go down a sensitive rabbit hole, for example. I think it speaks more to that. I think everyone's got the capacity to be more porous, as we talked about. But I think that the people who are drawn to being artists, who are at the higher end of the sensitivity, are the ones who are more there, if that makes sense.
Yeah, completely. And I mean, I think like most people, most artists I know, I think share the sentiment. And I've certainly felt this way my whole life of kind of like being born a creative, sensitive person, but into an environment where that is not the thing that's rewarded. And I think that I have gotten lucky to be in enough spaces in like growing up in my life that it was safe enough that I haven't had to put up some of the really thick defensive walls that I think a lot of people do in order to like survive. But I think what's feels kind of scarier, I guess a bit like it feels right now like we're almost in this place. Like, okay, I feel like I've had classes in my life, and I've had teachers that have been absolutely amazing and just created these really open, supportive environments where they really just like let me run with my creativity. But everyone, got that same kind of encouragement and nurturement. And then I've also been in classes where, you know the type, like the teacher is really strict and they don't want you to do your own thing and they don't want you to do your creative thing. And it's just, and it just changes the entire ecosystem of the space. And I feel kind of like right now, culturally, we're in that sort of like bad teacher ecosystem a little bit, and then there's all of these and then all of the sort of like sensitive creative kids in the class are kind of looking around to each other, and at first I think there's a lot of people that have been sort of silently suffering for a while, and I'm feeling, at least in my own life in New York City, this kind of start to really looking across the classroom and starting to have these like little side conversations, and even just the kind of stuff like we're talking about right now, and just this sort of sentiment of being like, wait a second, what if this class isn't exactly how it's, what if we could be in a different class? And what if there's other people in this class that think that this is just how class is supposed to work and are trying to get the teacher's approval to participate in this system of class? But what if there's like a better classroom environment we could all be in, where we all get to write poems and do little dances?
Yes, so you're like that's an amazing analogy, and I think of because I've been saying now for a while, we're at this weird tension point where the kind of era of the rich white male is at this sharp end. It's gone into meltdown. Look at what's happening. These,
Mhm.
and then on the other end of the scale, and I was talking to, I don't know if you got to talk to Radim Malinic, Paradiso, but
Mm-mm.
Radim's originally from Czech Republic, and he was talking about growing up in this kind of quite masculine environment societally at the time, and where creativity and all these things he's immersed in now were just not the done thing, really. And the speed of that transformation over a few decades, and all these conversations, whether it's through podcasts and the sheer ubiquity of access now to well-being conversations and big ideas around creativity, feels like that's in overdrive too. And I think there's this tension somewhere between where that lot despise the fact that these people are sort of starting to get a voice and have access to all these things and want to shut things down. And on the other end of the scale, everyone's sort of getting on with it and evolving quite quickly and having some great chats. And that, on a good day, that really excites me.
Yeah, yeah, completely. I feel exactly the same way. I feel like, yeah, there's also a lot to be excited about right now if you can really look in between the events of things.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and there's no getting around the fact that these events are big and need addressing, but I do think there's power in this stuff.
Yeah,
In
I mean, I think,
as we said earlier, just the way we carry ourselves and the kind of getting out there and shining in our way.
yeah. I mean, I think as artists, it's like what we are attuned to do is sort of, I've been thinking a lot about just like dualities in general. And I think that as artists, we kind of represent this sort of duality to, okay, like what's going on in a kind of mainstream, and then like fitting in this sort of other space in contrast to what is normal or what is considered normal. And I think that it's like not even despite the events, it's actually that because there's all of this doom and despair and horrible things going on, then it's like the job of the artist now, I feel, to almost begin to infiltrate this empty space of joy and hope and levity, and to start to kind of like be the leaders to crawl in to that chamber, which is actually very spacious and radical right now.
Love that. That's really provoked the writer in me now. I'm already imagining that in kind of a fiction story, something very cool about that. But yeah, it's getting sidetracked. But that's beautiful, and I think you're right. And you said something when we talked at Paradiso that really stayed with me, and it was about that idea of, yes, there's these headlines, and yes, that's happening, but also you specifically named a shadow in the moment. Maybe there's beauty in that shadow over there, and that's really stayed with me actually. And I've been kind of sharing that in myriad ways, just in conversations with other people about that, the things that are right there in the moment to anchor us to that more positive side that we talked about. I think there's something lovely in that. I'd love to just go back to your background. You touched upon it then a little bit, but what did childhood look like for you? Did you grow up in an environment that enabled your curiosity?
Yeah, I feel really lucky for my childhood in a lot of ways. I grew up in Eugene, Oregon, in a medium-sized college town. And I mean, my parents have always just been huge champions of my creativity. I feel so lucky for that. They just always, they just always believed in me. And I think that is the kind of the luckiest set of cards you can get as a child born into the world. So yeah, I think creativity and making things has always just been this through line of my life that's really been supported by my parents. And Yeah, I mean, I went to public school. I didn't go to like special art school or anything. And I had a series of um bad teachers that didn't want me to make things, but then I had a couple key, like really, really amazing teachers, I think, at really well-timed points in my life. That just, yeah, really helped me keep that kind of fire alive. And I went to a really alternative college. It's called Quest. It no longer exists anymore. It's a tiny liberal arts school. It's like 500 kids on a mountaintop in Canada. And the whole premise was basically about curiosity and questioning things. And I feel like I really learned how to learn in that environment. The professors were just absolutely brilliant, and all the people I was surrounded by just really creative, really smart, really individual, unique people. So I think having enough experiences like that to establish in my own mind that spaces like that where people are really authentically engaging with each other and the world around them and showing up very presently to their everyday lives can be the baseline. Like that's what life can be like. I feel like I have that standard now, um, which I'm really grateful for.
Yeah, that's a magic feeling, isn't it? To feel like, because you work commercially, as do I,
Yeah.
but to feel like that's just a part of a broader life where you are
Yes.
living this artist life, that I just, it excites me at all times. That everything is. I'm not this. I've left my kind of workaholic days behind. Like the first few years in the industry, I was just so excited to have a chance to be an illustrator that it was, and I'd done the dodgy jobs and worked in factories to support myself. So I didn't want that. And I once I got a taste of it, I realized that when I'm engaged and I'm passionate about something, I have a real drive and a work ethic that I actually have to manage the other way, not to burn out sometimes. I'm in that place now. I now know the value of switching off. But by switching off, it's not like I'm not being an artist anymore. It's just that I can go and read that cool book that I'm into, or I can go and do something different that's not commercial work. And I just love that.
Yeah, I've been thinking about that a lot too, about how like being an artist is not conflated at all with your output as an artist. I think that's totally a myth too, because I'm realizing the way I'm really learning to rest right now. That's a huge lesson of my life. I feel like, yeah, I'm in that chapter of things of figuring out how to do the other side and to really recharge. And I'm just watching how necessary that is, but then also how um supportive that is to my actual holistic artistry and spirit and just the bravery at which I'm able to create things is just so benefited by me being able to also confidently do nothing at all.
And that takes real effort.
Yeah, yeah. It takes real effort because that's not the kind of thing anyone teaches you. Like real rest, serious rest, that's the kind of thing that we have to figure out actually for ourselves. It's crazy. I feel like I'm in this personal crash course on how to rest right now.
How have you been going about that? What changes have you made?
Well, I think I'm really learning about sort of perceived rest and real rest. And what I'm realizing is that real rest needs to happen on such a cellular level. It's way more than just going on a walk around the block. Like I'm realizing that it actually takes effort, ironically, in a kind of way. Like I have to be very intentional about resting. But really what it looks like is actually just creating so much space. Like seriously so much space. So I've been doing things like I mean, I've been spending a lot of time in silence by myself. And sometimes I'll just sit there. there will be nothing happening and my phone will be off and there will be no noise. And I just sit there. It's not even like I'm trying to meditate. I'm not trying to meditate. I'm not trying to do an exercise. I'm not trying to I think that's the point. I'm not trying to get anywhere. I'm not trying to rest so I can do a thing after. I just like turn it all off and just let myself hang out in that void space. And I think it's funny that I think that's an idea that's probably really uncomfortable to a lot of people. But I'm realizing if I can keep myself in a state energetically where I'm okay just hanging out in that void liminal space, then I can do anything. Then all the other stuff comes really easily. But it's almost like I need I need to be able to exist peacefully in that void space in as the sort of baseline for balance of my life, not as the reaction to the busy stuff. It's like then it's like the soil, the soil is calm, the soil is nice, the soil is empty, and then nice plants can start to grow out of that space.
Beautifully put. Um, there's a magazine in the UK called The Idler. It's great. Their strapline is slow down, live well, have fun. And I ironically subscribed to that during early twin parenthood. And Tom Hodgkinson, who's the founder and editor, wrote a brilliant book called An Idler's Manual. And he offers up 50, ways to idle. And it's some of the things you just mentioned. One of them is just sit on a bench. It's like, go and sit on a bench somewhere. One of them is stare at a wall. And it's for that same reason, it's about that. Then the soil is a lovely analogy. And it's so important to the creative process because, and I'm sure you can relate to this, but when you have a brain that sees creative opportunity in more or less everything out there, that can be exhausting. And those voices can chatter really loud and, used to keep me awake at night.
Yes.
So there's a certain pleasure to be taken by stepping away from that and making a conscious decision, like you said, to rest and to just sit or be. It's as simple as that, but it's not easy. It takes training, just like spontaneity takes
Exactly.
training.
The simple things are never easy, and that's the beautiful, maddening paradox of it all.
It is, and I think there's joy to be taken from taking charge of both things and then being able to utilize them consciously for just fulfillment, general fulfillment, not about output, like you said, but just about actually being a well-balanced, firing human being.
Yeah, like I mean, I think that's what it is. I think almost that at a really deep level is the kind of like goal or mandate of being an artist, at least how I see it, is like really nurture my spirit and nurture my body and watch what comes when I treat myself with that level of love.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I wrote two things down from your bio, which I loved, and one was things that don't exist but could, and
Mm,
that is a good way to look at it because those things, the truly great things that make us buzz so much that we'd love to make, they don't come unless unless you achieve that balance.
yeah. I mean, that's the thing. It's like they only come in that empty space. So you
Yeah,
have to make the empty space so things can fill the empty space.
yeah, that's exactly it. So why motion? What are the origins of your wonderful motion style?
The origins of motion, it's really interesting. I feel like I'm gonna keep getting more answers to this for my whole life. But yeah, the origins of motion basically was the summer after my sophomore year of college, and I just had no idea what I wanted to do. There were, I mean, I was in college, and just nothing was clicking for me. And I think that's always been a kind of thing that I ebb and flow out of in my life of just not feeling like I'm resonating with spaces that everyone around me is resonating with, and then get launched into that like what's wrong with me? Why am I not interested in any of these classes or anything that's going on at all? And I was really just having, yeah, I was really just having this kind of low period of like, how do I exist as a human in the world happily? Like, where's my place in all of this? And I went home for the summer to Eugene, and I got a minimum wage serving job, and then I was fired after 2 weeks for not being a culture fit, which is still confusing to me to this day because it was like a dive bar. And it's one of those things that's really funny in retrospect. It feels like small and light. But at the time, when you've only had like two jobs in your life, and then you get fired from one, and you're already in this place of being like, there's nowhere for me in the world. It was a really, it was a really, yeah, it was a really hard time in my life. And I kind of just had one of those moments where I was like, I have to take a step somewhere from here in some direction. Keep, I have to fill my days with something. And I found a intro to animation class, summer class that was happening at the university. So I signed up for it. And then, yeah, I just fell in love with it. Part of it was because I had that space in my life. Like I was so searching for something that I connected with. So then to find something that I did connect with, I feel like I gave myself to it with full force. But what I love about animation and motion in general is that I have the power at my fingertips to tell all my own stories. I don't have to ask anyone for permission. I could have a vision in my mind, and then I can go and just like hole myself up in my bedroom and make my thing. And I don't have to prove it to anyone. I don't have to do it the way that anyone else tells me to do. It was this amazing tool that gave me a huge amount of autonomy over my own ideas and my own creativity. So I think I was really drawn to it because of that. And then I also think I was really drawn to it. So I took a lot of math classes up until this point in school. That was kind of the thing that I had found that engaged my brain the best. Yeah, I've always liked math. And there was something about animation because of the technical part of it. And it's very thinking in terms of space and time and putting compositions in terms of other compositions. And it's actually it's very conceptually crazy, like the puzzle that you're spinning in the whole thing at the end of the day. And I love that part of it too. So it was a combination of this high level creativity of being able to express myself, but then I actually just found the work of it so engaging to the puzzle part of my brain. So it was a combination of those two things that just really made me take to animation.
I love that. I love having two young kids who they're 5 at the moment. I just adore watching their natural tendencies. And my lad in particular, he said to me the other week, Dad, have I got an engineering brain? And I said, yeah, I think you do. Yeah, because I'd said it to him in the past that, and he loves puzzles and mechanisms, and it just since he was a tiny baby, he was drawing, like grabbing watches and just obsessed with the buttons on them and things. And I just love watching that flower and then putting him in an environment where he can explore that. So I find it really interesting when people recognize those things, because there's, again, it's that tendency to put the arts in a box and disconnect it from something like maths. But maths can be every bit as creative, and so can science and all these other things. And I find that incredibly, that's the genesis of this entire body of work, this creative condition stuff.
Yeah, I resonate with all of that so much.
And there's a real organic aesthetic to your work, which I adore as someone who also uses a lot of organic media and kind of collage, and love walking that line of digital and the handmade. Was that just something that was quite natural for you? You're always drawn to the handmade?
Yeah, I think I've always been drawn to the handmade. I think in some ways I don't have a ton of choice over some matters, because actually there's like I almost think I'm really steered by my limitations in a kind of way. And yeah, there's certain elements of art and design and a kind of technical perfectionism that and a way of seeing I don't know, like a more analytical way of creating things, I guess, or sticking to a plan that I'm actually just not good at. Um, Even in a traditional design sense. I've been really reckoning with this a lot lately because think I mean I really think that like all of our limitations are also our strengths in kind of ways. Because even though I'm an artist, I actually am not I'm not good at like seeing. I'm good at having sort of a high level feeling vision of a thing. Like I can envision what I want something to feel like, and in terms of like pacing and a energy kind of way. But I never or rarely have something where it's like I see an image and then I work backwards and I make that image. I'm not good at seeing things concretely in my mind and then working to make the thing. Or it's sort of like my process of creating things. I have to just start going and then keep reacting to the thing that's right in front of me. And that's just how I make things best. And I'm actually, yeah, I'm really brushing up against the fact that I'm actually just not that good at creating in certain other ways. So I think I've been really steered by the way that I authentically like to create.
Yeah,
And I
scarcity is really important.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think to your question about the like the tactile and the physical, I think that the reason that I like those things is because it gives me that ability to like really problem solve in the moment and wrestle with a physical substance that's in front of me. And I can just understand that and be inspired by it so much more concretely than try. Yeah, I think even digitally, it's like having all of the possibilities open to me but not being someone who works with a vision, that can actually be stifling. So I think like the limitations of the physical world actually act as a really productive constraint for me creatively.
Do you tend to find clients that align well with that, as in you get relatively long creative leash?
That's something I'm working with now. I feel like I'm in this kind of transition of, yeah, I resonated with what you said earlier. I think I've been doing the hustle thing for a long time now in different capacities, but for the past 7 years or whatever, I think I've really been in this like take on a lot of work and a lot of different work and work hard and fill time and like make a career like that kind of space. And I feel like I'm in this transition right now of just like what is the kind of guiding energy of my life. And it's forcing me to reckon with the projects that I've done that went well and the projects that I've done that didn't go well and the process and why the projects that went well and why the projects that didn't go well. Yeah, so it's almost like I'm having to be more really, really, really selective right now about the kind of projects I take on. I'm basically realizing like I have to take on projects that give me a big leash and a lot of trust because that's how I make my best work.
Mhm.
And if I don't have the right conditions for that going into a project, then I'm actually not going to be able to do a very good job and everyone's going to be disappointed and I'm not going to have fun doing it. And there's just no point in that. So I think I'm actually really having to let go of a certain type of project workflow that I've been trying to make fit. And I'm realizing it's not fitting.
Mm. Yeah, and that's something I find that's something we get better at with experience too. As you improve at articulating the way that you like to work, but also in a way that
Exactly.
because that benefits a client, doesn't it? But it takes time to learn how to get that across, and also where to point yourself in terms of finding the opportunities for such work. Um,
Mhm.
I'm still getting there. I think it takes time, but
Yeah. I mean, I think my hunch is it's one of those things that actually like is really, really ever evolving kind of forever because I think as an artist, you're kind of always pushing yourself and always pushing your process and always pushing your craft. So I think it's like we're inherently designed to kind of always push against our container. And do things more freely and more experimentally. So I think I've also surrendered a little bit to the fact that this feeling that I'm feeling right now of advocating for myself and pushing for more freedom, like I've actually already done different permutations of that, and I'm gonna do a lot of other permutations of that. It's just like another one of those times in the pattern.
Yeah.
You know?
I love that. We talked about your writing before. I'm a huge fan of it. And
Thing.
I enjoyed a post the other day about the less finessed um, work, where there's less pressure for it to be good and accomplished, and the freedom that gives for exploration. I'd love to hear a little more on that, because they're very rich and evocative, the pieces. I'm almost there with you when there's one about walking around the park, and it's just, there's a real magnetism in your writing that really takes the reader in there. And I like the idea that that's not something you've worked to perfect in any way, that's just the authenticity.
Thanks. Yeah, I really thought about you when I was writing the last one. It felt really resonant to a lot of the conversations that I feel like we've been having. When I do a video project, I feel like I have a really high level. I can, I have a really high level of like executionable skill, but also the level of detail I'm able to understand the piece at. I'm just able to get so precise with it in a very specific way. And partly because, I've had like a lot of inspirations and a lot of mentors in this space. And I've just been doing it for so long that I feel like I have a much more refined lens on that medium. And I've been feeling this kind of frustration of like, but my writing comes from like the same equally creative place, and my painting comes from the same equally creative place. And I want to put these things out into the world on a similar scale, but then also this frustration of I almost want to be I want to grow more at these. I want a chance to grow more at these things in a kind of way. Yeah, and I think I've been approaching that with a level of frustration. And I had a moment where I was just started writing, and it was so stream of consciousness, and it felt so fun, and it felt so free. And I was just reflecting on how part of the reason I was able to feel so free is because like I don't have any of the voices of like a mentor being like, like do it this way, or this is how it's supposed to be done, or any of the techniques in a way that it's still so pure at the level of how do I like it, which I think is how it all starts, like in every creative medium. Like you have to start somewhere, and you have to start from a place of how do I like this thing, and then you get more actual skills, more experience, and you do the thing enough to just like keep refining that over and over and over again. But I just found so much delight in the space of not having any idea or guidelines or voices telling me how it should be or not. And realize that, like, okay, so say, one day I write a bunch of best-selling books, and there's a lot of people reading my writing and a lot of people coming to see my paintings. Like, that's cool, but I won't ever get to go back to this same space before it. I'll never get to go back to this same space where it's completely unpressurized.
Yeah, because you could still be writing with the same purity and the same stylistic
Yeah,
energy, but once you reach a certain level of having a track record that's out in the world,
yeah,
by default you do surrender some of that naivety.
right. Because it exists in a greater body of other things. There's context to it. And right now, like my writing doesn't have it doesn't exist in the same pool of context as my video work does.
Hmm. And I think it's really important to always have something of that ilk going on. You know, I call it emotional creativity, the stuff that's just in you and you need to express.
Yeah.
And I think that that can change. There's no limit to how many times that can change in a life. That's the excitement in it. Because I had went through a period recently of reflection when I had a really quiet spell. It's been better this year, but the last couple of years have been quite quiet for many reasons. Part of some of them external economies, whatever. But I certainly have some responsibility in that because I just have to go after the next exciting project. And I write fiction, I write non-fiction, I do this podcast, I do the coaching. And it's not that I'm a jack of all trades, it's just that I'm very curious and I don't put too many limitations on that curiosity. And over time, I've seen the ways that they can open the most unexpected doors. And that's how writing Hector's book for Paradiso came about. So on one hand, I was kind of going, you dick, like why did you spend so much time writing fiction as a new parent when that was probably the time to really double down on the financial security that, well, not security because there never was any, but the finance of being an illustrator and actually being able to make commercial money. But I just needed to do it, so I did it. And that took on a life of its own. You know, I released these short story collections, published these little books of vignette stories, really down and dirty stuff, and I really loved it. But then I thought, well, actually, that project for Hector doesn't come about unless I do all of that, because I did that.
Wow.
He asked me to contribute something for a book he was putting together for Off Festival 2023. Absolutely anything, just give us something. We want something from the speakers. So I wrote this short story about a freelance having a meltdown and chaining himself to a lamppost in a tiny suburban town on a Tuesday afternoon, just as sort of a mini cry for help. And he loved the energy of that story that I submitted because I was really into my fiction at the time. And it was then like a year later, he came back and said, I keep getting asked to tell my story. I think maybe Paradiso is the time to do it, but I don't want to do it in another interview. I'm bored of giving interviews about my story. Could you do that for this? And I went, oh my God, what a challenge. Yes, please. So we did that. And I got to illustrate the book, write this biography in a short story format. And that was just an incredible kind of emotional creativity challenge for me. So it's that thing, you know, where it kind of validates this time spent doing that, even if it left me, you know, skin. It's kind of like, well, now I'm getting this incredibly fulfilling project and there are doors opening for more of that. But then I suppose I'm stepping into that space we just talked about where it's like, now I need to fill the hole for my emotional creativity with something new that's unpressurized all over again.
Exactly.
And that'll never stop.
Yeah, that will never stop. I mean, yeah. Yeah, it's such an oscillation. There's so many things in that way. I think that, yeah, I run up against that all the time. All the time. Yeah. But yeah, it's that exact thing. It's like there's the sort of ladder of command of like your client projects and like that can kind of steer your journey, or you can steer yourself, or like every passion project you do, yeah, it leads to something else and leads to something. So it's almost like, yeah, it's like then if someone really likes the book that you wrote about Hector, which was amazing, by the way. I loved reading that.
Thank
It
you.
was really great. But then it's the kind of thing where, okay, a bunch of people really love that and then keep coming to you to do more things like that, which originally just started out of this amazing passion project. And then at first it's like, oh my God, this is so cool. I get to do this thing and people come to me for it. And then it again turns into like, okay, well, this thing that you perfected and this thing that you know how to do well, and the passion or the inspiration or the pushing your own voice and artistry then actually has to arise in some counter space to that thing. So it's actually this like, and I think that's actually coming back to the multiple different mediums. Like, I think that's why that's really advantageous, because then it's almost like you have these different places to spring back and forth to, where you don't have to start totally new every single time. It's actually like the passion project and then professional energy. It can like ping pong between these things in a way that it can, hopefully the goal is in the end, create a kind of creatively sustaining ecosystem that also has elements to that can support you financially. But not everything has to be has to remain the passion project all the time, and not everything has to generate money in that ecosystem. Because I find that they switch,
Mhm.
because you do the passion project that ends up really cool, and then people want that, and then that starts generating money, and then like it's just it's just a web.
Everyone's different, aren't they? I know some artists who have a very specific way of working, a niche, and they love that, and they'll probably do that for the rest of their days, and they make good money doing that. It's just that I've got a brain that needs exactly what we've just discussed. I always, for right from college, even before college, same thing. And I guess there came a time when I made peace with that. And maybe as I get older, I'll get slightly better at balancing the ability to make money through it and spending too much time on stuff, but probably not as well.
Yeah, yeah, same. Me too. I think for a long time, I was trying to find like, okay, what is the balance? What's the thing? What do I want to be doing? And I also have really surrendered to the fact that I like doing all kinds of different things in all kinds of different ways. And, I think I'm going to live one of those lives with a lot of different kinds of lives inside of it.
Yeah, I mean, from the outside looking in on your stuff, there's a very strong, consistent voice across all of the mediums that's just screams you. So, I would say have faith in that, have confidence, because yeah, it's really got a brilliant tone running throughout all of it. So, and I can, from the outside looking in, I can see that transmedia. Maybe I've got the advantage of having spent nearly 20 years in this industry and kind of been able to, and also being something of a polymath. Maybe that's where it comes from. But I do think that will go, that I think that is there on a level that you don't necessarily have to have a trained eye to pick up on. That's how strong it is.
Thank you. When you have something like that you're living so close to, you can be a little bit more trusting in the broader sea of like, yeah, it feels like a life jacket in a kind of way, in a way where like then you can float the ocean with a little more freedom.
Yeah. Oh God, yeah. And the catharsis. Do you find the writing cathartic? Because I really do.
I find the writing cathartic. Yeah, I'm in an interesting period right now where I like intellectually want to be writing more, but I'm not having a lot of genuine, yeah, I'm really having to actually like rest my output mechanism right now. I'm realizing in a way that feels kind of uncomfortable to me, but for some reason I just know it's what I need to do because
Mhm.
I'm not finding a lot of catharsis in writing, and I'm not finding a lot of catharsis right now in the sort of free ways of creating things that have normally been bringing me catharsis. And I know that yeah, it's like I need to rest that muscle a little bit. So it normally does, but I'm feeling uncomfortable right now because it's not bringing me that right now.
I think I'm really glad you said that, because that's really it's quite profound in the sense that that's big self-awareness. And I think that a lot of us kind of live and die on these values we attribute to ourselves as being singular, and to pay attention of the ebb and flow of any of the things that we do, not just as artists but as humans.
Yeah.
That's an ability in life, isn't it? It's like to go, oh my God, I think of being a kid and, you know, loving drawing one minute, but just really not feeling like drawing the next, and going through all these hoops of guilt and thought of, because even then I'd attributed this as a part of my identity. But the fact that oftentimes I was just more excited to be sat down by the river and playing with my friends by a field and not doing much of anything, and that excited me far more than the drawing did. But even then, you sort of go, "Oh my God, I should be drawing more because I'm good at it," and blah blah blah. So I think that self awareness is quite pivotal, actually, to happiness.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, completely. I mean, the pattern that I'm realizing is if I try to bypass that and go to the like just start, just do it, just create, just like yeah, if I try to bypass that, then I just end up in a real yeah, there's just like a lot of like wrestling energy in my mind in that space right now, and I'm just realizing and that just kind of takes me out of the place that I need to be centered in, I can't associate that kind of work with that kind of tightness wrestling. So I almost feel like I'm noticing that pattern happening. So I have to kind of step away from it to actually preserve the peace of that space for myself right now.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good. That's a really good insight. I hope people take notice of that because it's not easy, is it?
No, it's not. I mean, what I think is hard about it is it requires a sort of longer term trust. It's that, yeah, it's that like analytical brain. This is what I should be doing. This is what I want to be doing versus that sort of deeper, what do I feel pulled to or drawn to right now? And yeah, and I feel like I'm just in this huge moment of trust right now where all of the ways that I have feel like I've been practicing and been conditioned to survive as creative and work and steer myself, like that's not working for me in the same way right now. And I'm really having to trust this sort of secondary intuitive voice that's like, back off and work on the part of your creativity that doesn't have an output at all.
Mhm.
And like start again from that baseline.
And don't just work on it, but also talk it, live it, really feel it and
Ah,
share it with, I share it with people on the dog walk that I've just met in a passing conversation. It's like I bypass small talk and go straight to something that I find more interesting. And it's incredible how that resonance and that energy can carry you. It goes back to that serendipity earlier. And I guess brings us full circle to that idea that we talked about of actually, the happiness and the flow of things too. And when you do sort of voice it and live it and really feel it and trust, like you said, that long term where you're headed, it's amazing how that can kind of throw up little ways of rewarding the trust almost, or putting little
mhm.
breadcrumbs in front of you to remind you that you are going somewhere that's right for you.
Yeah, yeah, completely. Yeah, it's just a much more freeing way to live, in my opinion. But a lesson that I think will always, another one that there's just so many iterations of like you forget it, and then another thing pulls you back into that in a totally different way.
Do you know? Yeah, I know I'm aware of how long I've kept you. I'll let you go soon. But I talked to you all day. But I'm reading a book at the minute called The Creativity Choice. It's not out yet, but Susanna, who wrote it, she talks about in early chapters. She talks about her specific angle in this book is looking at people who have found ways to sustainably create and make and make it a career and kind of, but do it in a fulfilling way. And she talks about contradictions as a one unifying trait of those people, as in, I love the chaos. I like I love to be among people and come up with ideas. Shit, I need a rest. Like, I also love the solitude. It's
Mhm.
like, and when I thought about that and thought of myself, I thought, oh my God, yeah, there are so many contradictions. I'm a really social person. I'm relatively extroverted, but God, do I need my alone time and my, just reading a book on the bed at night and things like that. It's like full of contradictions. And yeah, I just found that really interesting that it's this unifying trait with people who use their creativity consistently.
Yeah. When I was in middle school and high school, I developed this signature drawing style that I called white space. And it's funny because it's like a very like high level concept, I think, for, like a 12-year-old or whatever. But it was these kind of, yeah, these like it's a little hard to explain, but I would make like lions and eyeballs and stuff, but I would fill it with this sort of like intricate, like line freestyle pattern type work. And it it consumed like a huge part of that period of my life. But what I loved about this style, white space drawing, is the whole point of it in my mind was that it was just as much about the stuff in between the lines as I was drawing as the lines themselves. So it was really this like, I loved drawing in the black ink while paying equal parts attention to the white space that I was leaving on the page. And I had this really big realization lately. I was thinking about white space and I was thinking about the in between. And this was probably a month and a half ago. And it occurred to me, I've been putting so much emphasis on my life in terms of what the actual events are and what the projects are doing and what I want to be doing. And I haven't put a lot of thought at all into curating the emptiness and curating my rest and curating my in-between pieces. And I was feeling really out of balance, and it kind of hit me really suddenly, like, in order to live in a way that's balanced, I have to be curating my in-between time with exactly the same intentionality. And that has really just prompted me into this kind of new, slower mechanism, this new phase that I'm in right now of thinking really, really, really deliberately about the shape of my rest and the shape of my in-between, and knowing that that exactly is the counterbalance to the other stuff, and that for the other stuff to look nice and to look pretty, like it has to have attractive in between as well.
I love that so much. Have you read In Praise of Shadows?
I have not.
Oh, please go and do it immediately. It's everything you just described. It's a Japanese book, and it was written at the advent of electricity becoming ubiquitous, and it's just this deeply sensual book at looking at things like how miso soup, these kind of golden cups, bowls even, were designed with lacquer. They were with gold lacquer. They were designed to be drunk in dark spaces with low candlelight, and how this ubiquity of electricity is kind of spoiling all this beautiful kind of use of shadow in Japanese culture. It's mind-blowing stuff. It's a really short book, but it's beautiful, and it speaks to everything you just described, so you should definitely read it.
Okay, wow. Okay, God. I could talk for hours just on that concept. I will definitely read that. That's so up my alley.
Yeah. Right, well, as much as I could talk to you for the rest of the day, I've loved this, and I'm going to let you go, because otherwise we'll just be both asleep on our desks. So.
We have a week-long podcast.
Yeah. Brilliant. Imagine. That'd be great.
Everyone really slow down and just listen to us talk about slowing down.
And then in keep with what you just said, like leave the sleeps in there, like the rests in between. Like
Yeah, totally. Yeah, we were talking about meditation and stillness, and we just decided to just be completely silent for 3 minutes and just be like, okay, whoever's listening right now, here's 3 minutes. Be silent with us.
Brilliant. I love that. I listened to Will Smith on Rick Rubin's podcast, and they did like a guided meditation at the start. I was like, that's perfect.
Yeah, I love that. It really gave me the idea to have just a stillness podcast where it's an hour, but actually nothing happens. So you just put it in your ears, but nothing at all.
Fantastic. Oh, I love that. Well, this has been amazing. Really cool to catch up, Tala.
Yeah, it's always so good to chat with you, Ben.
What did you think? Did you enjoy that? I hope you did. It was a very raw, human, honest, heart and sleeve conversation, and I knew it would be, because it's funny. I got to Paradiso, and on the first night I was sort of hovering around with my margarita. I'm usually a cocktail drinker, but they looked bloody gorgeous, so I got one, and I was hovering around, and this was about halfway through the night, and I just happened to be walking past a group of people talking, and out of the corner of my eye I recognised Tala, having been on a website and checked it all out when I was looking for potential panel guests for what I was doing at Paradiso. And I sort of hovered, and it reminds me of my absolute inability to walk up to strangers in a public setting and start a conversation. Once we get started, I'm great. I love talking to strangers. But what do you say? What's your opening gambit? Oh, hello, hi. I never know how to open. Anyway, got chatting to Tala, and within about 2 minutes we were past small talk and we were into deep stuff, so I knew it was going to be a good panel with her and Owen, which it was, and I loved this conversation just as much, so I hope you guys did. Big thank you to Tala for taking the time out of a busy schedule to talk to me. I hope this might be a regular thing, because I really love what Tala's about, and I would love to bring that brain onto this show more often. But who knows? She's a busy lass, so we'll see what's going on there. I hope you enjoyed it. Get us your feedback, ben@bentalon.com. Always delighted to hear from my lovely audience. If you want to support the show, this cause of exploring and elevating creativity, please do consider dropping a little rating, review, or subscription on your preferred platform. And please, most importantly, tell a friend. Word of mouth is a massive way of helping podcasts get into more ears. So cheers for listening. As ever, big thank you to the founding sponsor of the show, illustrationx.com. Do head over to thecreativecondition.com now. You can find all the resources, including the reading list, the coaching opportunities. If you'd like to work with me one-to-one, I can help you elevate your creativity. That's about it from me. Cheers to Tala Schlossberg. We've got some awesome guests coming up, including PJ Richardson, founder of Laundry, Jessica Hish and Timothy Goodman. Also, that's a live conversation from Paradiso. I'm going to be bringing you that one as well. We've got some special episodes coming up on burnout. I've got another one coming up on more mental health issues around that idea of understanding ourselves and not overdoing it, getting away from the idea of success that might be on somebody else's terms. So loads going on as ever. Loads for the website. Check it out. Thank you so much for listening, guys. Want to hear what you're up to? Please do get in touch. Have a great week.